Inconsistency rarely looks dangerous in the moment. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't crash your life overnight, it just quietly shows up as a skipped day, a delayed start, a promise you almost kept. And because nothing breaks right away, you assume nothing was lost. But that assumption is the trap. Think about it. When you skip something once, your mind immediately begins to rationalize. It wasn't that important. You'll do it tomorrow. One day won't make a difference. And technically, that's true. One day doesn't make a difference. One missed workout doesn't ruin your health. One skipped writing session doesn't kill your book. One delayed conversation doesn't destroy a relationship. But that's not how inconsistency works. It doesn't operate in single moments. It operates in patterns, in the slow accumulation of choices that seem insignificant until they're not. The danger is in the permission you give yourself, the mental door you open. Because once you've justified breaking a commitment once, it becomes easier to justify it again and again, until the exception becomes the rule. Small breaks in discipline feel harmless because the consequences are invisible at first. You miss one workout, you delay one conversation, you let one standard slip, and life continues. Nothing collapses. So you tell yourself it didn't matter. But it did, because inconsistency doesn't punish you with failure. It punishes you with repetition, with restarting, with the exhausting loop of beginning again and again, never building momentum, never gaining ground. Every time you break a pattern, you don't just lose a day, you lose the compounding effect of all the days before it. And over time, that cost becomes staggering. Consider what happens when you restart constantly. You spend the first week rebuilding what you lost, the second week getting back to where you were, and only in the third week, if you're lucky, do you start making new progress. But by then you're tired, the novelty has worn off, and the cycle begins again. This is why some people work incredibly hard and still feel like they're standing still. Not because they're not capable, but because they're spending all their energy rebuilding instead of building. Consistency isn't about working harder. It's about not having to start over. It's about protecting the ground you've already gained. It's about making tomorrow easier because you didn't abandon today. Inconsistency weakens self-trust. It teaches you that your word to yourself doesn't hold weight, that your commitments are negotiable, that your standards are flexible. And once that belief takes root, confidence erodes, not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. You start to doubt whether you can follow through, whether you're capable of sustained effort, whether you're the kind of person who finishes what they start. And that doubt becomes a filter through which you see every future decision. This is the hidden cost that no one talks about. The erosion of self-trust. The quiet voice that says you've failed before, you'll probably fail again. And that voice doesn't just affect one area of your life. It spreads. It colors everything. You stop setting ambitious goals because you don't believe you'll follow through. You stop making promises because you're not sure you can keep them. You stop trusting your own judgment because your track record says you can't rely on yourself. And the worst part, you're not wrong. If you've been inconsistent for years, you have evidence, real evidence that you don't follow through, that you quit when things get hard, that your commitments are conditional. But here's what matters. That evidence is not permanent. It's not who you are. It's just a record of what you've done. And you can change that record, one consistent day at a time. Inconsistency creates internal friction. It forces you to restart constantly, to rebuild what you already built, to relearn what you already knew. It's the difference between climbing a mountain and rolling a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down every few days. The effort feels the same, but the progress is not. Think about the mental energy required to restart, to convince yourself to begin again, to overcome the resistance that comes from knowing you've quit before. That energy is finite, and every time you use it to restart, you're not using it to progress. You're not using it to create. You're not using it to build something meaningful. Disciplined people don't have more willpower. They just don't waste it on restarting. They conserve it by staying consistent, by not giving themselves the option to quit. And over time, that conservation compounds. They have more energy, more focus, more capacity. Not because they're special, but because they're not constantly fighting themselves. Disciplined people are not perfect. They stumble, they miss days, they fall short. But they return quickly. They don't spiral, they don't justify, they don't wait for motivation to rescue them. They just continue, not because it feels good, but because they've decided that continuing matters more than how they feel in the moment. That's the difference, not perfection, just speed of return. This is critical to understand. Discipline is not about never failing, it's about failing small, about catching yourself quickly, about not letting one missed day become a missed week. Most people think disciplined people don't struggle, that they wake up motivated every day, that they never feel resistance. But that's not true. Disciplined people feel the same resistance you do. They just don't negotiate with it. They don't debate whether today is the day to skip. They don't wait to feel ready. They've made the decision once, and they honor that decision daily. Not because it's easy, but because they've learned that the cost of inconsistency is higher than the cost of showing up. Consistency protects identity more than motivation ever could. Motivation is a feeling, it comes and goes, it's unreliable by nature. But consistency is a decision, a commitment to who you're becoming regardless of how you feel today. When you act consistently, you're not just completing tasks, you're reinforcing a belief about yourself. You're proving, day after day, that you are someone who follows through. And over time, that proof becomes unshakable. Your identity is not what you think about yourself. It's what you prove to yourself through action. Every time you show up, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. Every time you follow through, you're building evidence that you are that person. And eventually, the evidence becomes overwhelming. You stop questioning whether you're disciplined. You stop wondering if you'll follow through. You just know, because you have years of proof. That's when everything changes. When your identity shifts from someone who tries to be consistent to someone who is consistent. When discipline stops being something you do and becomes who you are. And that shift doesn't happen through motivation. It happens through repetition. Through showing up when you don't feel like it. Through honoring your commitments when no one is watching. This requires accepting responsibility, not in a heavy, burdensome way, but in a clear, honest way. Progress requires repetition, not intensity. It requires showing up when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when no one is watching. It requires choosing the long game over the short thrill. And that choice is yours to make, every single day. This is where most people get stuck. They want the results of consistency without the responsibility of consistency. They want to be the person who follows through without actually following through. But you can't outsource this, you can't hack it, you can't find a shortcut that lets you skip the repetition. Progress is built in the boring middle, in the days when nothing exciting happens, when no one is cheering, when the work feels mundane and the results feel distant. That's where discipline is forged, not in the moments of inspiration, but in the moments of resistance, when you choose to continue anyway. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. You just have to show up more days than you don't. You just have to return quickly when you stumble. That's enough. That's always been enough. The true cost of inconsistency is not the goals you didn't reach. It's the life you never fully built. It's the person you could have become if you had just kept going. If you had protected your patterns. If you had treated your word to yourself as sacred. Inconsistency doesn't steal your future in one moment. It erodes it quietly over years. And by the time you notice, the gap between where you are and where you could have been is vast. But here's what matters. You can close that gap, not by doing more, but by staying consistent with less. By protecting the small disciplines. By returning quickly when you stumble. By building a life where your actions match your intentions. That's quiet power, not loud, not flashy, just steady, just real. And it's available to you right now. The gap between who you are and who you could be is not measured in talent. It's not measured in intelligence. It's not measured in resources. It's measured in consistency, in the days you showed up versus the days you didn't, in the patterns you protected versus the patterns you abandoned. And the tragedy is not that you failed dramatically, it's that you never fully tried, that you gave yourself permission to be inconsistent, that you treated your commitments as optional. But here's the truth, it's not too late. The gap can be closed, not overnight, not through some dramatic transformation, but through the quiet, steady work of showing up, day after day, week after week, year after year. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to never fail. You just need to be consistent, to honor your word to yourself, to protect the patterns that matter. That's how you build a life. Not through intensity, not through motivation, but through the quiet power of disciplined repetition. And that power is available to you, right now, in this moment, with the next decision you make. The question is not whether you're capable. You are. The question is whether you'll choose consistency, whether you'll protect your patterns, whether you'll honor your commitments. That choice is yours, and it's the only choice that matters.